In this Brain Performance seminar, I'm going to talk to you about self-leadership and specifically emotional regulation, the capacity that we as human beings have to make accurate internal representations of the emotional world, to enable us to avoid threats, to maximize rewards, to ensure that we are safely plugged in the social group that we belong to, and then to leverage the diversity of the team to ensure that we enhance our collective innovative capabilities. So what can you expect to learn from this session? Firstly, self-leadership enables us to apply our personal resources and those of the group for optimum goal achievement. And effectively, we are goal-directed, which means that the brain makes an internal representation of what is out there, especially in this context of the emotional world, to ensure that we stick together, that we collaborate as a group, and so that we stay alive, survive and thrive in life, and to understand something about self-leadership in this context, it's worthwhile to understand goal-directedness, to learn something about how the group can be optimized, and then how to optimize the group collective capabilities. Self-worth and sense of well-being form a springboard for goal achievement and should be cultivated. I will deal with this in one of the forthcoming slides. And then remember that self-leadership always takes place within the context of social safety. We dealt with this during a previous Brain Performance seminar when we spoke about resilience, and I will just briefly deal with this again since it is so important and forms the basis on which we operate as individuals within the emotional world. Effective empathy enhances social safety, and cognitive empathy forms the glue of collective creativity. I will explain this in quite a bit of detail so that you can understand the difference between these two forms of empathy and how important empathy is as a hard nose for enhancing your innovative capacity in your group and in your team. Then collective creativity completes an important axis with social safety and goal-directedness to provide emotional regulation. This is essential for high-performance individuals and for high-performance teams. So I'm going to put it all together at the end when we look at the slide again. So self-leadership can be defined as the capacity of the brain-body system to optimize internal resources for sustainable high performance and to apply own resources for optimal performance. Note that the first refers to the internal resources, everything that is in the brain-body system, the capacity of the system to utilize the brain-body system and its energy at its best, but sustainable, which means that we have to respond to challenges through an acute stress response. We need to be in a baseline relaxed physiological state otherwise, so that you have these spikes of action and of high performance and then return to a baseline relaxed physiological state, which is not a state of apathy, but a state of silent alertness. And then we also have to understand how to apply our resources for optimal performance. And these resources could be my own, but can also belong to the group. And so we need to understand what the drivers are that ensure that we do this optimally as individuals, but also within the group context. If you look at the slide, you will recognize it from the Resilience Brain Performance Seminar. This is where we ended off resilience. And these important drivers form the highest weighted drivers of resilience to ensure that we build resilience, the capacity to prevent brain-body system implosion, especially in the presence of prolonged stressors and adverse events. Now, what you see here is that the bonding and sense of belonging, identity and meaningfulness, which speaks to social safety, on top of the wellness rhythms of exercise, movement, nutrition, sleep-wake cycle, and mindfulness, or as we call it, silence in the mind as an activity, form the most important contributors to build resilience. I'm going to continue from this point and on top of this build the emotional regulatory system which drives self-leadership in this model. Now, first of all, what you see here, bonding, sense of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness, social safety forms the basis for our capacity to self-lead and to lead others in groups. We need to understand that we need social safety regardless of the field of life that we find ourselves, whether this is a sports team, a school, an organization, a team within an organization, and specifically whether you are a leader or a member of a team, you need to understand this very well. Social safety need is a requirement. If you do not have social safety, if you do not have trust, if you do not have a sense of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness within a team, you have a very big problem. It effectively means that the team cannot perform at its best, at an optimum. And so I would argue that a high-performance team need to have social safety, need the trust, and need this sense of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness. Bonding speaks to trust, where sense of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness speaks to culture. And at even a higher end of the spectrum, you think about culture. Culture is determined by the way we do things, or determined by our values, the things we value together, which determine how we do things as well. And if you think about it, even at a higher level, the way we do things often says something about our authenticity. So if you want to be authentic within a group or a team, you have to be plugged into that group and team and share values and share that incubation space. This forms the basis for the self-leadership model that I'm going to build for you now. A factor that really influences sense of belonging and bonding and our social safety is something called affective empathy. Now, affective empathy refers to the affect, which is our feelings, the way we feel about somebody else when we feel for that person's loss or pain. Now, what you see in this illustration is that the brain on the right lost the ice cream from the cone, starts crying, and the one on the left feel the sense of loss and share the ice cream. And this is affective empathy at work. Affective empathy enhances our social safety. It enhances the group belonging and bonding, and it ensures that there are safe incubation in the group and that everybody feel safe around each other. So this is not the same as cognitive empathy, and I'm going to speak about cognitive empathy a bit later in this seminar. Just think about it, be aware of it, that we need empathy, but effective empathy works at this level where it ensures the social safety. It continues to ensure that we are safely incubated, and then cognitive empathy really works with a collective in a more innovative way, and I'm going to get to that just now. So in the illustration here, we can see that effective empathy directs its contribution to the amygdalas, the pathways there between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex to ensure that we have a sense of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness. And if there's a certain connectedness, it can even enhance bonding. And having spoken about the amygdalas and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the pathways between them, here you can see from the 3D model the ventromedial pathways. So the amygdalas are richly connected throughout the brain towards the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain in the depth and the middle of the brain and the bottom of this frontal lobe. And these pathways perform a very important role amongst a number of roles, but the one that we want to highlight, this important role I'm talking about, is this idea of belonging, identity, and meaningfulness for the group. And effective empathy really nourishes these pathways. What we've done here is to add goal-directedness and collective creativity as the 2 additional emotional drivers in the model on top of social safety. And you'll see it emerging here on top of the amygdalas and the hypothalamus. So this is not an anatomical extension, but effectively social safety at its base, goal-directedness and collective creativity following on, really form the three major pillars of emotional regulation and really self-leadership in the model. And so, simply said, we need to be socially safe, we need to be plugged in, we need to have established commonalities and a safety within the group, in the team. Then we need a high goal-directed state, and we need to be able to leverage the value of the diversity within the creative collective. And this is quite a mouthful, and I'm going to continue just to establish this a factor-based approach to show you all these factors that you need to really look after as a leader, as a self-leader, to ensure that you, in your high goal-directed state as a team, achieve your goals, that you remain in your purpose, and that you together remain safe and ensure that you are collectively as creative as possible. So what you see here is goal-directedness, collective creativity, and then social safety related to the amygdalas and the hypothalamus. Of course, all on top of these wellness rhythms, which really provide a platform. And you can see that all these factors that I'm going to continue to build for you prevent chronic stress, prevent implosion, and ensure high performance. So let's kick on from here and discuss some of these factors that are important as they influence the drivers of the emotional driver system. You remember we talked about effective empathy being that feeling that we have for one another, deep emotional sensations where we really just look after each other, start to share what we've got with one another, and ensure that we are socially well and safe. That is effective empathy. Now, cognitive empathy is where I can put myself in another's shoes. I can see the world and a problem from your perspective. That is not an easy thing to do. We need capacity and capabilities to be able to do that. And it really starts in the early years. You see from this slide that cognitive empathy develops in early years already. And it starts with something called theory of mind, and theory of mind is being developed through role play. And role play means that you can see here one of the kids is a patient, another is a doctor, another is a nurse, another is a pilot, and these two in the sandpit they are builders. And so we play different roles when we are young children, and we learn to understand something about those roles and to also play different roles, switch roles, etc., so that we can actually be in another's shoes. And this, what we call theory of mind, is so important. It is hugely important. And this is probably one of the most important capabilities that you as a team need to learn, especially because the robots are coming. And artificial intelligence are going to take care of a number of things in way better fashion than you and I can. So we need to understand what it is that will differentiate us, at least in the short and medium run. And this will be cognitive empathy, at least the capabilities to, as a biological system and as a biological team of biological organisms, to really be able to put ourselves in another's shoes and to really collectively collaborate at our best. This has got nothing to do with soft feelings, etc. This is a hard-nosed piece of science. Cognitive empathy that you can see developing here plays a very, very important role to ensure that we as a collective collaborate properly, that we are collectively creative. At this point, I want you to take a break. We will continue in the next part at exactly the same point, and we will continue to build the seminar, and so the three parts will stand together as a continuum of effectively one topic being dealt with efficiently. But take a break now, just relax, move around, and just come back to the next part when you are ready and replenished again. Don't forget, you are a biological system and you need these periods of rest in between.